Good evening, colleagues. Allow me to say good evening, boys and men. Welcome to our session. My name is Sediko, a founder and a trustee of Progressive Socio-Economic Investment Institute. It's a public benefit trust that is involved in public benefit activities, various activities, which includes hosting webinars that discusses various topics. Today, colleagues, is Valentine's Day in the country, and there are some bogus men's conferences around the country. As a public benefit institution, we don't participate in bogus activities, but we organize the real ones. That's the reason why, colleagues, we are all here to discuss all challenges that are faced by men and also issues of the gender-based violence, issues of men's health, issues of toxic masculinity. Colleagues, today we've got experts around these various topics, and I am not going to spend a lot of time introducing their names. I will just request them to present, and in their presentation, they will then introduce themselves give their biography. Without a waste of time, I'll give it to my colleague from Tota in Tota. Am I calling it right, my brother?
Yes, you got it right, sir.
Yeah, Tota in Tota. Tota in Tota is represented by its founder and chairperson, Vio Kisi, and he'll take us through about issues of gender-based violence and toxic masculinity. Over to you, my brother.
Good evening, friends, colleagues, men and women who have joined us this evening. My name is Buntu Makridelo. I am a member of an organization called Dota. I am my brother's keeper. I am a founder and a chairman of this organization. Of course, the organization is a men's organization that was formed purely on the basis of problems that we have identified as men. So therefore, our sole existence is to look at issues that are affecting men, and not just look at those issues, but create a platform where men will come together and discuss those issues that are affecting them. And of course, when we come together, as men, we are not living in isolation. We are living with women around us, we have children around us, we have elderly, we have a whole lot of people that we interact with. So in us coming together, we get to look at issues that are affecting them as an extension to issues that men get to deal with, particularly, if I may, gender-based violence. Gender-based violence is perpetrated by men. So by us coming together, when we talk about gender-based violence, we get to speak about, women as well, and perhaps even the damage that gender-based violence, causes in our society. So we are not solely looking at issues that are pertaining to men, because by extension, we get to deal with other people as well. That is who I am, and that is what we are about. Over to you, Ndate Rakoloti.
Thank you so much, my brother. But in terms of your own analysis, what makes men to be, like they say, men are the perpetrators of gender-based violence? What causes men to engage in this brutal and barbaric activity?
Well, maybe I should start by defining gender-based violence, so that we can move, or rather, sing from the same hymn. Gender-based violence has been, defined as action that is caused by, one individual against another individual, and you'll allow me to say one individual against another individual, on the basis of that person's gender. But in South Africa, we have mostly, gender-based violence, which is linear from the side of men, abusing or mistreating or ill-treating women. So that's why from time to time, when people think of gender-based violence, they think of men, abusing women. But it is not necessarily that. But of course, the prevalence of men and statistics are very clear when it comes to that. The mere fact that in South Africa, we have more men that ill-treating women. We have more men that are abusing women, and it has therefore, for that reason, been assumed that it is when we speak of gender-based violence, we're speaking of men bashing women, and that is what we have identified as really something that we need to look at. When, if I may, when we look at the makeup of a man was made by God. And if you look at the scriptures, if you look at the book of Genesis, chapter 2, if you look at verse 18, when the Bible speaks of man and the introduction of a woman in the life of a man, God says, it is not good for a man to be alone. I know that, we most of the time quote this scripture when two individuals are getting married, particularly a man and the woman are getting married. Excuse me. But when God looked at a man, he said, it's not good for a man to be alone. Not to be lonely, but to be alone. He continues to say, I will therefore make him a help who is meet for him. Now, when God had in his mind a woman, he had somebody who's going to assist, somebody who's going to, play a role in making sure that whatever God has for a man gets proper support. So when we as men fail to understand the importance and the role that women play in our households, in a family environment, when a mother is not there, when that nurturing spirit, when that nurturing presence is not there, we are bound to see a dysfunctional family. So when men fail to identify their role in the lives of these women, they then tend to abuse them. The reason why men, if I may summarize, the reason why men abuse women, it is because one, men, fail to understand their responsibility towards women, and men fail to identify, the role that they themselves need to play in the lives of the women that are around him. Men have been given strength. Men are physically built to be protectors. Now, when men fail to play that role, when men fail, to be active in that space, you will then see women being victims of the very same men that are supposed to protect them. So that is where the disconnect is. And we are saying, as Dodandoda, that first of all, we as men need to find ourselves. That's why we say Dodandoda. Dodandoda, what it means that be a man that you call yourself. If you say you are a man, then we need to see you being that man. Dodandod, I am my brother's keeper. Now, if you have a brother, your responsibility is to keep him. So this is why we come together in these spaces and we talk, we equip each other, we share information, we share best practices, because we have identified that there is a problem, and that problem is us as men. So that is my submission in as far as why men are, perpetrating the gender-based violence. And And allow me to, extend this, because when gender-based violence has now, taken place in a society committed by men, of course, it therefore becomes a responsibility of us as men as well to, once we have identified that, because what is needed in our society right now is men who will stand and be the difference that is needed. Now, we say men need to take their position and be the protectors of their own families, communities, and the country at large. And the government has also, taken a positive step in making sure that, the laws and everything there is, to make sure that perpetrators are brought to book, and strengthening the existing laws in as far as gender-based violence now is concerned. We are saying as men, if you are a man, whether you are a perpetrator of gender-based violence or you have seen it happen around you, your role is to, from that instance, make sure that you do something about it. Hence, in every corner, we are calling on men to make sure that they are the kind of men that, these women, these sisters, our mothers run to when they are encountering, issues of gender-based violence. This is what we want. This is what we are calling on all men to do. One, make sure that around you, you become a go-to person. That men, that young kids are going to run to when a boyfriend refuses, to let her go, when the relationship has lived its existence. Be that man that this girl will run to and say, I am trying to sever ties with so-and-so who was my boyfriend, and he does not want me to. He is threatening me. So be that person who's trustworthy enough, for these girls to run to. And it's going to take us equipping ourselves, of course. You must know who to go to. You must know what needs to be done when a lady, is in danger of being a victim in as far as gender-based violence is concerned. There are courts. This is the information that we need to arm ourselves with. There are courts that they can go to. There are police stations that they can go to. And if possible, be that man who's going to hold her by a hand and take her to a police station so that she can be equipped, in as far as protection order is concerned. The information that is needed, you must be that kind of a man who's assisting, actively involved in making sure that gender-based violence becomes a thing of the past. So this is the kind of, information that we are drilling on men, and we are rallying, around this type of thing so that, our society can be a safer society, because we as men have stood up and taken a stand that gender-based violence is not, and femicide is not going to happen where we live. Of course, we know femicide, that it is when a man in particular, according to, how it is described according to law, it is when a man in particular, decides to violate a woman on the basis of her femininity, on the basis of her gender. Now, we have seen a lot of this happening in our country, and statistics I've been, reading. I've been updating myself on this, for the past couple of years, and the situation that we find ourselves in is really not, a good situation. It's quite dire, to be specific. And until we as men take a stand against abuse of women, children, and elderly, including, those who involve themselves in same-sex relationships, because they have, become now endangered species, and a lot of things are happening to them. And it is our role to make sure that we stand against that as well, as, the weak and the vulnerable in our society. let me hand over to you, Mr. Rakolote, again.
Yeah, thank you so much for your presentation. We really appreciate it. I'm going to request my colleagues who are on the lobby to raise questions or make comments in terms of your presentation. If there's any comments or questions on your presentation, it's time to take those questions or inputs on this topic of gender-based violence and toxic masculinity. Colleagues, any inputs, questions, comments from your side? Please raise up your hand. If there's a question, comment on this topic of gender-based violence and femicide / toxic masculinity, please raise up your hand. Any comment? While colleagues are still thinking about their comments and their inputs, in terms of your organization, what is your footprint? Are you covering the whole of the country? Are you based in a particular province? And what type of programs are you running?
All right, thank you, sir. I am based in Pretoria, and some of the men that I work with are here. We have our regional coordinator in the Eastern Cape. We have our regional coordinator here in Gauteng. We have a regional coordinator in the Western Cape. Those are the 3 provinces where we are active. We have programs where we have made strides in making sure that our message is spread. The programs that we have, one of them is awareness on gender-based violence, as Alav rightfully said. And we go in depth on gender-based violence. Here, because of time, I kind of, browse through some of the things that we look at. We have, as a program, gender-based violence awareness. We also have the Uncles Club. The Uncles Club really is a program that was given birth to by the work that we do. As men, one time we sat and we looked at issues that are affecting men, as I said, and that is broad. And when we looked at, the makeup of a man in this day and age, we realized that men are carrying baggages. And the baggages that these men are carrying have everything to do with how they were raised, with the upbringing that they've had. So when we looked at that, we realized that if therefore the problem that we're encountering has everything to do with the upbringing of a man, why therefore do we scratch the surface and look at men who are already grown ups, men who already have been fed with all these stereotypes, all these kind of things that are now coming to the fore as a problem in our society. So we then decided that, look, it will help us if we focus on the young ones and make sure that we groom them, and not just groom them, but give them the tools to become responsible men when they're grown. And in us looking at that, of course, we're looking at us because we took responsibility for the broken families that we have in our society. We realize that when men leave, the children that they've given birth to be raised by single mothers, we are creating a gap. We are creating a vacuum. So it's best that we as men now, and be the uncles who are going to play that fatherly role in making sure that these young ones, at least get that fatherly influence, that fatherly love. Of course, we cannot be the fathers, but there are roles that when we play effectively, that can bridge that gap. Take, for instance, when a young boy needs to go to a soccer match, we then took that responsibility and said, look, we will then have to avail ourselves and make sure that the skills that we have. I grew up, as a boxer. I played soccer. So I have an in-depth knowledge of both those two codes and cricket as well. So when a mother is raising that kind of a boy, it becomes easy for me to tell a mother what is needed because I am there. I give that kind of support. So this is the work of the Uncles Club. It is basically being there for these young ones. And when we looked at a number of things as well, I spoke about, us as men leaving these women to fend for themselves, raising these kids on their own. What we also do, we give information as to if the mother wants this man to be present in the life of this boy or a girl that he gave birth to. We then give information in as far as courts are concerned in getting him to pay papgeld, isondlo, and getting him to participate, in these, kind of activities. But also something that came to the fore is that most of these men are not part of the upbringing of their children, not because they don't want to, because the mothers are not allowing them to. Simply because when the relationship broke, when things got sour, a mother felt hurt and decided that I don't want this man anywhere close to me, including my child, forgetting that this child is this man's child as well. So these are the things that we looked at. These are the gaps that we have seen. And we are making sure that as much as we possibly can, we source, the best available legal, help and professional help to make sure that the role that we play is informed by, the law and, the expertise that are available out there. So these are some of the things that we do. Also, if you look at the Eastern Cape, there are, among other things, a passage, we say in a common term, going to the mountain. And Xhosas, and I've seen that the Sutus and then the Pedis also go through the same. But within the Xhosa nation, when boys go through that passage, there is bad teachings. There are bad teachings that they get from there. So we have also infiltrated that space to make sure that when they come out of there, they come out as real men, not young boys who have gone through the passage, who are circumcised, who are going to come and be a nuisance in the community. And we are speaking from experience here because these are the things that we have seen. We've been part of that, but we are making sure that we remedy the situation. We're fixing that problem. So these are some of the things that we are doing. We have quite a number of things that we do, but for the sake of time, allow me to hand over to you. If I get a chance, I will explain more in the time to come.
Very interesting work that you're doing with your organization, and we really appreciate that from the Progressive Socio-Economic Investment Institute. There is a question, I think, to all of us, but maybe because you are the one who was presenting.
Yes, sir.
First, the expectation is for you to respond to that question. The question is that, how do we raise boys who are going to become men, who are not intimidated by smart, vocal women? How do we raise boys who are not going to be intimidated by smart, independent, vocal women? That's the first question, and maybe you can attempt to respond to that, or anyone amongst the participant who can respond to that. Please raise up your hand. You'll be given an opportunity to respond. How do we raise men or boys who are going to become men, who are not intimidated by smart and vocal women? Dr. Lesego, to you before I give it to my brother to respond. I can see your hand is up, Dr. Lesego.
Yes, I was going to answer this question as part of what I'm going to present, but I think it's a very important point to talk to at this moment. Allow me to introduce myself as well as part of this conversation. That I'm raised by a single mother. I met my father when I was 30 on News Cafe, I'm a Hatchfield, you know. I'm a rural boy, I come from a rural township, and
Okay, okay, Dr. Lesego, just a minute so that I can manage attendance here. Just a minute, Dr. Lesego.
yeah. And I like what the comrade was saying from Dot. That now I was raised by my mother. The only father I know in my life is my mother. And how do we raise men how do we raise boys who become better men? And I've tried to learn this with my two sons. Just be there. You know, be there, drive them to school, listen to them. Go to soccer matches, like the speaker said. Go to soccer matches. There's no formula. But I've once heard somebody saying, children don't understand logic. They understand the fact that somebody's there for them. Whether you are a father, you are working hard 2,000 kilometers away, they don't understand that. All they understand is somebody who's there for me, every here. I go to a soccer match, somebody's here. I go to this, somebody's there. I go to that, somebody's there. And I think that's a starting point. There's a lot more to the question, but I think as men, as fathers, the first step we need to take just to be there for our kids. I hope that makes sense. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lesego. Other inputs? How do we raise boys who are not going to be intimidated by independent, vocal women? How do we raise boys who are not going to be intimidated by vocal women? Any other inputs? Pundu?
I missed the latter part of either a submission or a question, Doc. And if I am to respond to it, I'd love for you to, not unless it was not directed to me, I'd love to get a bit of that. I heard you talking about, you know, the talking about boys and sport. If you can, please summarize that for me. I missed it.
Dr. Lesego was saying there is no formula on how to raise your kids, in particular boys. Okay. There is no formula to say, do the following steps. But the main thing that you should just do is just to be there. That's the summary of Dr. Lesego. But then the question on the chat group was, how do we raise boys who are going to become men, who are not intimidated by independent, smart, and vocal women? But the question goes further and say, how do we deal with contradictions that comes with gender equality? For example, in our own homes, we've got some activities that are done by girls and others that are done by boys, like cooking, cleaning, washing dishes. And also in our own cultures, there are some activities that are reserved for men, like slaughtering cattle and whatever, they are reserved for men. So how do we deal with those contradictions when we want to build a gender equality-free society? How do we deal with those contradictions of the cultural practices, socialization that still promotes patriarchal activities? How do we deal with those contradictions?
I often say when we talk about a man, that we should not build men, we should not invest on men in relation to women. We need to stay in our lane. A man who has been raised to understand his role, a man who has been raised, to understand, his usefulness, will not have a problem coexisting with a woman, whether it's an empowered woman. I said in the book of Genesis, chapter 2, when God said, he made man, he said, I will make, a woman who is, I will make him help, who's suitable for you. Now it means the roles have to be identified there and be clearly defined. What is the role of a man when he is on his own? What is the role of a man when he is with a woman? Once we identify that, once we define that, once we strengthen ourselves in that area, it will then become easy for a man to coexist with an empowered woman. We are in no competition with women here, but we do find ourselves with these highly empowered women, highly educated women, and women abazaziyo who know their story. And if we missed it in how we are raising these young boys, we are going to have men who are intimidated.
I think we are losing you there, Bundu, in terms of your network. We are losing you there. Bundu? Yeah, I think we are losing you there. In the meantime, colleagues, any other inputs or comments on, while we are still waiting for Bundu to sort out the network, any other inputs on the role of boys and men in the fight against gender-based violence and femicide? Anyone wants to make inputs on this topic before we go to the next speaker? Are you back, Bundu?
Yes, I'm not sure if I'm audible enough, because on my side, it looks as if everything has been fine.
You're audible now. Yeah, there was a problem with your network.
Oh, great. No, let me summarize then what I was saying. When we deal with men, we are not dealing with men versus women. We empower a man so that he can take his rightful position in society. And I said, of course, we will as men have to, coexist with these highly educated women, assertive women. We're not going to take nonsense from men on the basis of them being men. So we must be ready to coexist with those women. And again, when it comes to gender roles at home, am I still audible?
You are still very audible, Bundu.
Oh, great. When we are raising kids, girls and boys, we need to understand that we cannot rubbish everything, that was done to us when we were growing up. And when it comes to gender roles, we need to understand strengths first. If a boy's strength is to, cut the grass, mow the lawn out there, and chop the trees and prune the trees, then let him do that to the best of his ability, and not confine him for the, on the basis of equality. Let's allow kids to grow up and be themselves. And if it is possible for a girl to wash dishes and a boy to rinse and pack, let it be done. But there are those roles that are suitable for men on the basis of strength that God has given them. So let's not take that away because we want that equilibrium, because we want that balance. That balance still works when a man is a man, when a woman is a woman, and playing his or her, role effectively.
Yeah, we are losing
each other. So we don't really need to rubbish that. But let's empower men, let's empower these boys to stand and be, counted in any society and not be bullies and be people who are using their gender to oppress.
Okay, Bundu, we are losing you, my brother, and I think it's your network. But thank you so much. I think colleagues have grasped what they were saying. Maybe Bundu, what you need to do, please disconnect and connect again. Disconnect and connect again. Thanks for the advice from Desmond. Please disconnect and connect again. And at that time, maybe your network will be fine. Just disconnect and connect again. We were having two speakers today in our men's conference. In the beginning, I stated that from the Progressive Socioeconomic Investment Institute, we don't believe in bogus men's conference. Annually, we host our own boys and men's conference. This is for the second year now. This is our second anniversary having this conference. And next year, also on the 14th of February, 2023, we'll have this conference. We want to provide boys and men with an opportunity to engage on issues that are affecting them, to engage on issues that are affecting society in general. Colleagues, you'll agree with me, boys and men have got also health-related problems. Sometimes we don't even feel comfortable as boys and men to open up on issues of health. We have in our midst a medical doctor who was trained in Cuba. He has got a postgraduate diploma, health systems management from University of Pretoria. He has got also a postgraduate diploma in health economics from University of Cape Town. He's a former clinical manager and the CEO of Mamelodi Regional Hospitals and Brest District Hospital, respectively. And he's the Chief Operations Officer of Sisonke Health Medical Scheme. So he'll be touching on the issues that related to health, men's health. And without a waste of time, colleagues, allow me to welcome Dr. Lesego Powe. Over to Dr. Lesego.
No, thank you very much, Sediko. What I like, I've just checked the participants in the group. There are 3 doctors that one of them was my senior, the other 2, one of them was in the same year as me, the other one was my junior. So I want them to add onto the conversation.
What happened, Lesego? You are muted, Lesego?
Oh, sorry. Yes, can I?
Yeah, you're audible now.
Yes, I was saying there are 3 other doctors on the platform.
Okay.
One of them was my senior at medical school. The other one was on the same year with me, and the other one was my junior. And I want them to participate in this conversation because it's a conversation, as you said, that there's somebody or a son. Yeah, thanks. I want
will
them to
remove the
participate in
person.
this
Thank you so much.
conversation because, as you said, it's a very important conversation when we talk about men's health. And I think the first thing that the first mistake we make as men or as society is that we think men's health is something to do with what's happening in the pelvis. You get an erection or you don't get an erection. We think that's where men's health starts and finish, and that's not the way men's health is. Oh, it's part of men's health, but men's health is bigger than what happens between that third leg between your thighs. Men's leg is much bigger than that, and men's health starts. Okay, maybe let me start here. The World Health Organization defines health as not only the absence of disease, but a complete well-being of a human being from a mental, psychological, and social point of view. So just because you are not sick, it doesn't mean you are healthy. So I want to talk to men's health. I'll talk to what happens, where people end up using Viagra and the likes. But I want to start with men's health from a point of view, mental health. There is a higher suicide rate in men than in women. Just last week, we saw a police officer shooting his girlfriend at Tembisa Hospital and shooting himself thereafter. The girlfriend died. He survived. He's still in Mill Park Hospital. And those are issues of men's health that we never talk about. And that's not the only incident. There's many of them that happened where a guy takes a gun, puts it on the woman, and puts it on himself. But in terms of suicide rates, there are more men committing suicide than women. I get kabo segaro na re monna o lela ka mogare o lela mo pelong.
Yes.
And how lela ka mo pelong, you hold the thing inside of you until to a point where you can't cope. How na go lelang, there's nobody to talk to, and then as the end product becomes you kill yourself. So I think it's quite important that when you talk about men's health, we start with mental health. The second thing that will come with men's health, there's obesity. And I'm gonna come go Viagra. Gents, let's go. And all these things are linked because if your mental health is not right, your sexual health is not going to be okay. Your mind, that's why the World Health Organization says biopsychosocial. When your mind is not right, your physical will not be right. So I'll get there. There's a problem with men that is called obesity, particularly what's called central obesity. Central obesity, gents, is you and me, Mukaba. I can't define it better than that. We've got a problem called central obesity. Central obesity then comes with hyperlipidemia. Hyperlipidemia means a lot of fat in your blood system. And a lot of fat in your blood system says you are at risk of a stroke or a heart attack. And that is why life expectancy of men in South Africa has always been lower than that of women. Even with the advent of ARVs, where life expectancy of women went to 64, life expectancy of women went to 60. Life expectancy of women went to 64, life expectancy of men went to 62. And obesity, Mokaba, is particularly central obesity, then becomes associated with diabetes, becomes associated with hypertension, high blood pressure. Diabetes is. So now I want to bring these things together just to what men think men's health is. now you've got your brain or your mental health or stressed. Now you've got high your lipids in your system. Now you're at risk of high blood pressure. Now you're at risk of diabetes. And at that stage, you're also at high risk of stroke and at high risk of heart attack. Unfortunately, men, and this was part of my research. Yeah, one of my postgraduate studies, that men's health-seeking behaviors is different from women. One example is that men will not test for HIV. How much did you test that? And like a sharp. And that's what we do as men. Once I test for HIV, she comes back negative, then I like a sharp, you know. So men have got a lower health-seeking behavior than women. So now I'm on problem number 4 with us as men, including myself. And then now we get to what we all thought men's health was about, you know, the problem between the thighs or the pelvis. Diabetes then will do damage to your nerves. That help with an erection. And you know that it's colloquial to say, and it's true. Diabetes that then does damage to the nerves that are supposed to help with the erection. Hypertension and hyperlipidemia. Hypertension, like I said, is high blood pressure. Hyperlipidemia is a lot of fat in your blood system. Then goes and says, the arteries that go to your male organ, yani clog, you know. So the blood flow doesn't get good enough, and therefore you can't maintain the erection. And then psychologically, because you are stressed as a man, psychologically, your brain doesn't send the right signal to your genitals. The brain doesn't send the brain sends a message to your genitals that it's not stressed. And the nerve that's supposed to say, open up the blood vessels, let the blood flow onto the male organ, it doesn't happen because you are stressed. So, Sediko, the reason I took this approach was to say that everything that we do affects our manhood. And it's not only about, I've seen a lot of guys, I've seen a lot of, and then when you do questioning, because it's easy. When you come to me and say, I can write you a script, but a good doctor will say to you, what are the issues? And you'll start talking, and then advice. And then before you know, you start any drug, you know. But it is important to look at the biopsychosocial aspect to a man, not only and I wanna just stop here and I'll take questions. But I want to challenge Khudisa Mangi, Desmond Pilani, and Bongani Mtembu, because they're all doctors, to also add to what I said. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Boy. There was an era in our country where we when I'm saying we, I'm sorry to generalize, where there was a Kobale Mukaba was associated the big time with heavy money, and you'll see these guys with big tummies, and when I was young, will envy them and say, no, when I grow up, I need to have that big tummy. But now, after hearing you, I need to shed some weight. Other colleagues who are in the same profession with Dr. Lesego, Boy, please come in and make your inputs on men's health problems and how can we ensure that men become conscious in terms of their health. Other colleagues who are in the same profession with Dr. Boy and they want to make some inputs?
While they're thinking, Sediko, and we need to make these things as practical as possible, and that's why I chose the form of presentation that I chose. Facebook was reminding me 2 weeks ago that you yourself started running for health purposes, and those are, you don't have to run if you can't. You can walk, but a simple 30-minute walk in the morning. Those are things that you start to do that you change your life, Mokaba is not going to go overnight, particularly for those who imbibe in unholy drinks. But it is important that you start, as a preventative measure, you said, you start with just walking where you can run. Before you know it, you are running 10 kilometers, you don't know where you got the energy, you do steps, you lift a bit of weight and whatever. And those are things that then you start doing as a preventative measure against. And when you're above 40, like most of us are, your prostate doesn't work as well as it should. Then your testosterone levels go down. And I think we're all adults on this call. When you're 21, you can maintain an erection for a longer time. But there's somebody again. But as you get older, when your testosterone level goes down, automa erection, then you have to wait 4 hours, 5 hours before the next one. But when you're 21, you can maintain the erection, then you do your business. So your exercising helps you with that as well, to say, as much as it's natural for testosterone levels to go down when you get older, but as you exercise as well, it just sends a positive message to your body to say, let me try and produce a little bit more testosterone so that this guy can get what he needs to get. So exercising is not only about losing weight, but it's about your overall health as an individual. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lesego. Any other questions, comments, inputs on the presentation made by Dr. Lesego? Dr. Desmond Kirakile.
Thank you very much, and good evening, colleagues. And thanks, Sediko and the presenter Buntu for this exciting talk that we had. I think it's for the first time I attend the men's conference, but as we indicated, this is the second one. So I think it's a very good platform that we must popularize and engage on it. But on the two topics that you have presented, I might have a different approach maybe, because colleagues have emphasized more on the topics that they were given to. But my caution to stimulate the dialogue, it would be, as Dr. Power indicated, that how the World Health Organization define health. So what we should maybe ask ourselves is that what are the stressors of a man in our society? And the second one is that how we deal with those stressors as men, in particular and in general as the society. How do we deal with those stressors of a man? So I think sometimes we jump those caution and maybe look for the solution before dwelling into those to say, are we dealing with the stressors of men or are we responding to what men are doing? And I think this is very difficult, and sometimes one can say it's a bit insensitive topic given the GVB that we are having. But I think we should sometimes go to the basic so that we can, in QI, other people, they'll say go to quality improvement where you ask deep question. You can ask up to 5 or more whys. Why this is happening, so that we can deal with that. The third question is that, what do we think that will make men feel to belong to the society? Is it their physical masculinity, or is it what they are taught, or what can make them to belong? And maybe the last question, and not limited to those, is that what are the expectations that we expect from all the sensitized, encouraged human society that we are creating, to say that there must be confidence, girl must be vocal, they must understand themselves, and as much as is good, but are we at the same time ask ourselves to say, what will we expect when now we become a society? That are we changing from a society that is dominated by men to society that is dominated by women, or are we trying to balance? So we might get unexpected consequences. So those, I didn't want to talk much about health, but it was just my thought that maybe we should broaden our topics and try to challenge those issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kagilo. And you are correct. Sometimes we don't go to the root causes. We want to still deal with the end product. It's like there's this analogy of you are mopping the floor while the tap is on. You don't close the tap. You keep on mopping the floor, but you don't close the tap. And if you do like that, you'll continue mopping the floor. But I like the first question that you posed. What are the stress drivers that are faced by men? Maybe let's pose that question to the group. What are the key stress drivers that men are facing currently? What makes men to stress so high in the current open? Bundu, do you want to say something?
Okay, I quickly on the stress drivers to men. It does sound, when we talk about it, as if we are broadening and we are blaming everyone. But unemployment is really a problem when it comes to men, and the societal expectations have been identified as stress drivers to men. In this case, the imbalance, in as far as the slices of bread that we bring in the household, when a man finds himself as a secondary breadwinner, somebody who brings less as compared to a wife. And when men have not accepted, the fact that a home is not built by a larger, because it speaks to a man's ego as well, by bringing more money in the household than a woman brings. So those are, of course, when you zoom into them, we do look at what fulfills you, what makes you happy. Is it being that provider? And the society, of course, does encourage that man. In fact, the Bible encourages that. But are you less of that man now when you are not able to bring that in a household? So those are some of the things that are adding to stress drivers. But also, Doc mentioned something here. In as far as sexual health is concerned, and I do want both of you docs to zoom into this problem, because when men are lacking as far as sex is concerned, they become hostile, because we have noticed that some men are not able to, vocalize their feelings, and that feeling of inadequacy, and they tend now to, when they cannot perform as they used to in their early ages, they can somehow bottle that up, and it leads to gender-based violence. It leads to hostility and unbearable, atmosphere in the household. In parting, because I have a whole lot of questions that I wanted to ask, but in parting, can you, Doc, explain how much of it is enough in as far as sexual engagement between a man and a woman? Because there's a misconception that if you go 5, 6, 7 rounds, and men even lie to each other, that I've clocked 7 rounds, 5 rounds, 4 rounds. How much of it is enough? I'm asking this question because it's one of the topics that we've had to deal with, and I do want that expert, input in that topic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bundu. I can see Dr. Lesero's hand is up. Dr. Paul?
Yeah, I'm not going to answer the question how much is enough. I want Dr. Musimani, because I've seen Dr. Musimani is also on the call. You must answer that one. Again, the doctors here, they must talk. You
Yes.
saw I put Kirakilo on the spot. He spoke. But I am happy that you brought these two topics together. And the question that Bundu asks to say, when a man is unemployed, for example, what makes him aggressive? When a man has had when he can't get in the direction, he gets aggressive. Why? And that's why for me, it was important to start this conversation from a biopsychosocial point of view. And that's why I started with mental health, and then I went to physical health diseases and all that. So historically or psychologically, let me say psychologically, as men, we feel the need to provide. We feel the need to provide. Whether it's biblical or not is a debate for another day. But I think the questions that Dr. Gihakilo also asked should be an indicator to all of us that we can't finish a debate on men's health in 1 hour.
Yes.
It goes deeper. That deeper thing. So to go back to Buntu's question, that when you are, and COVID has taught us this as well, or has told us what we already knew. Now all of a sudden, as a man, I'm normally Friday, I go out, I go to Sidle Majida, I come home. Now all of a sudden, Ramaphosa calls a family meeting and says, the public ways. Now I must come Friday and face this woman. All again, I've been avoiding my erectile dysfunction issues by going to the bar. Now I'm here. She's demanding what is, I'll call it rightfully yes for now, and I can't believe. And then how do I respond? Violence. I've got now, like I said, I want to make this as practical as possible. I've got now, I've been working, lockdown. Salary card. I know a story of a guy who never told the wife that he was retrenched for 3 months because he felt that society has determined that I need to provide. I've told you earlier on that as men, our health-seeking behavior is poor. So all these things, people don't seek health, people, we get these pressures everywhere. And that's why the suicide rate amongst men is higher than women. But we don't talk about it. We don't talk about it unless it is that guy got him this hospital who shot the girlfriend and himself. Then we only talk about it then. You know, we were talking earlier on, I mean, we were listening earlier on during the day. Ntutuko Shoba. He orders somebody to go and kill a pregnant girlfriend because he could not face his wife to say, I impregnated somebody else outside. You got the late Joe Mailena. I'm sorry to put people's names out. The late Joe Maila was the spokesperson for the Minister of Health. Joe Maila shot himself at a shooting range in Silverton because the woman had found out he's got an affair. I'm sorry, but I know. And I saw Sediko Koza on the platform. She might correct me, she might say I'm right, she might know the story better than I do, but that's a story that I know. So the issue is that all these things are linked. Until we deal with the mental health of a man, we're not going to deal with all these other issues that come as a result of that mental health. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And you said you are not going to answer the question, how much is enough?
Dr. Musiman can answer that one.
Yeah, you have referred that to Dr. Musiman to say, how much is enough? Because we are lying to each other. Man, age, 7 to 7. No, I better 2 nights. What? And we are putting pressure on each other. And anyway, there's no competition in making love. Whether you do it once, whether you do it twice, this is not a competition. It's not like we are running Comrades Marathon. Dr. Musiman, you have been delegated to respond to that one. In fact, it's a directive. You have been instructed to respond to that one. Dr. Musiman? Okay, while you are waiting for Dr. Musiman, can we take other inputs, questions? Please raise up your hand. I can see Junior Khwedi, your hand is up.
Thanks, Abut. Greetings to everyone. Am I audible?
You're audible, Comrade Khwedi.
Okay, thank you. Look, man, first let me appreciate Mohlomongwe being a participant in a real men's conference. You've indicated when you open or you only organize real ones. And I regret the fact that this is my first participation. But however, let me indicate that the 2 topics you came up with, they are perfect for what one would need to understand. Because I want to believe that what Dr. Lesego has indicated as an overall definition of health somehow plays a major role on how can we control gender-based violence in our society. Be that as it may, is that from where I'm sitting now, making this as an input, and of course I'm taking it from what Dr. Kihakilo has been raising as form of questions, that perhaps we need to dwell much on those so that we are able to, as and when we mop the floor, we are guaranteed that the tap is closed. We deal necessarily with the social inequalities that we find ourselves confronted with as the society at large, which has a potential to either affect men's health to sexual activity and also give impact to gender-based violence, which is something that we need to somehow try and link them together. Maybe I would say to you, Comrade Sediko, that it will be fair that in the next conference, if we can wait that long, we debate deeper on how can we deal decisively with the social inequalities in our country, which has a potential to somehow play a major role in ensuring that there is victimization of one gender by the other. But of course, I want to also agree with what Bundu has indicated in terms of how do we raise a young boy to become a man who's confident enough to be able to stand against what one has termed as independent women as and when we grow. That I would also want to share the very same sentiment that I think it is our responsibilities as parents, and of course correctly captured by Dr. Lesego previously, that our presence in their lives, our presence on their daily activities might in a way try to shape them. But not only that, I wanted to add an indication that kids, they don't normally listen to what we say, they look at what we do. If we are present as parents, we should also be able to, from time to time, play a role that seeks to want to show them how to appreciate the value of a girl child from an early stage, before it arrived to a point where they would be influenced by the street and start viewing a girl child as an object for them. We start by guiding them, nurturing them to a direction where they'll understand that culture, as introduced to us historically, and as we are made to believe that a man in a particular space would have to maybe behave in a manner that shows Wuti Windoda. I think that's what Doda and Doda is somehow trying to indicate. To a particular extent, we need to ensure that as and when we raise our kids who are male for that matter, we are able to link them to the conditions that are ever changing, which would now make them understand that the environment we are living under now seeks to want to transform historical understanding of what a woman could be. Now, this is one thing that I would so much wish that with sufficient time, maybe from time to time through our separate engagement, we would be able to create a space for a men's parliament, not a conference this time, where we can bring in our teenage boys to come and engage and be with us in the form of engagement when we debate the overall conduct of the society. But in overall, I want to agree that part of what contributes more in gender-based violence has to do with our social inequalities. And if we can dig deep and dwell much on that, maybe we can come up with some few elements that would be assisting to the entire problem. I submit.
Thank you so much, Dr. Khoedi. Thank you so much for your input. I just want to, before I take Dr. Khakilwe, let me indicate that, Junior, we don't have to wait for next year, Valentine's Day, for us to have another conference. Between now and next year, within our own wards, within our own streets, within our own houses, let's continue having conversation with young boys and men. We don't need a hall full of men for us to start a men and boys parliament. We can start the conversation with 2 boys or 3 or even 1. Let's have that conversation with young boys so that we can bring them up to be responsible citizens in this country. Dr. Khakilwe, your hand was up. Thank you so much, Dr. Khakilwe.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. I've seen Dr. Musimane has just left, but I hope he's listening. Yeah, I think, colleagues, the issue of sex is a very difficult one. And, and we grew up obviously entertaining it and talking it on the street and not in the right platform, which it will be talking it with a partner about sex, what one's feel about sex, what are the expectations around it and what we should do. And I think those will be only relevant questions with two individuals to say what is the expectations amongst ourselves, how do we want it and whatever, and not us talking on the street, because the sex that we usually talk about, it's more sex that is related to hormones, to masculinity, to wealth, and we are to also to a certain extent have creating a wealth-driven society, and wealth-driven society in form of business or of monetary value, not necessarily in terms of conscious and of the right thing to do or based on the ethics. So maybe that's one would say that we need to look at sex as a room for the partners, and us on the street look at our human being as being a conscious human beings, and not a well-driven society where we end up competing with unnecessary things. I mean, if you take, that's my view anyway, I'm not a sexologist, but if you take people that want to dominate, they start having money, they start having many girls, they start, trying all funny things, going to boys, young girls, and all those things, trying to prove their power. And it's kind of society that we are building around to say strength, wealth, and all those issues. And another issue that I would want to raise also on consciousness is that I think COVID has taught us many things. And I think Dr. Poet talked about it to say that what can we learn from the recent crisis that we had, or the crisis that maybe it's about to end? We've just realized to say that wealth is nothing, but what we need in our health is the health. I mean, COVID, we then saw health as it was so threatened and affected, and now mental health and people losing a lot of jobs, it has bring home to say, are we healthy individuals? Then we say, if we don't finance health so that we can address that point that Dr. Poet talked about, to say what is definition of health, we need to finance health so that we can stay in equilibrium as a human beings, so that we address the socio-economic through health, so that we address the social determinants of, we say social determinants of health. If we can address those by financing health, and what does bring as men to, I think it must lead us to say that we need to be advocacy of our, if we want to be our brother's keeper, we need to be advocacy of our health, to say, are we seeking health? And the health that are we seeking, is it of quality at the point of care? I mean, there's no one who wants to go and sit at the whole clinic for the whole day waiting for, people seeing you there and thinking that we are unhealthy and whatever. So that's affect a lot of method of health seeking behavior. And that is also affect males, to say, how do we seek health and why we are not seeking it? We have a choice of saying that I would rather die because I'm a man. So it leads to a point to say that we need to be advocates for our health system, and we need and we should not be ashamed, because now it has proven that health is point of departure in our behavior, in our society. And if there's any crisis, health should come up. So that is what I'll say, that we need to look at that, to say that let us stop this thing of saying, how do we make money? But how do we become a social responsible human beings? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gerakilwe. Very valuable inputs. Other comments, inputs from colleagues before we close? Dr. Bowe?
Yeah, I think that it's also, when you introduced me, you told people who I am and what. But I think it's important that I also talk about Dr. Gerakilwe. Dr. Gerakilwe is the immediate past president, Rural Doctors Association of South Africa. He's a ruralist. He's the chairperson currently of the Rural Health Advocacy Program. Like I said, he's a ruralist. He's a chief. But he's a chief now. And it is important that when you talk about health, we don't talk about what happens in Pretoria or in Joburg. It is important that when you talk about health, we talk about somebody go Musina, go Lusikisiki, go Guruman, and how we define our health system. And he's bringing me now into a political arena, and I'm not going to go too much into politics, but it's important that when we talk about health, we never forget those people. You know, a lot of us on this call come from rural areas. It's important that we think our mothers and fathers. And I think this is why I've always kept Dr. Krakilo close to me, because he reminds me of where we come from. And I know we're hijacking your platform, Comrade Sediko, but it's important that when we talk about health, whether it's mental health, whether it's men's health, we talk about the guy who, you know, the when Nkosazana Zuma developed a health plan, said every single South African must be 5 kilometers at most away from a health facility. We are not there yet. But it is important that we think about those people. We think about how do we make this men's health issue, how do we make it about them? How we don't know what happens in terms of gender-based violence in those areas. How do we talk about gender-based violence in that context? We talk some of Pretoria, they are reported. It's easy, they are reported every day. But there's a lot of those things that are happening in a deep Palabora when nobody reports, you know, go Newcastle when nobody reports. So I just thought I must just hijack your platform, but we need also to be thinking about the rural people who opt to stay in rural areas. You know, we must think about them as we start charting the way forward for the country, because the country will never be okay if we sort out problems at the city. They'll move from the rural areas to the city. We need to start by sorting out problems in the rural areas as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Powe. And what you are saying, I agree with that. For some of us who are in this webinar and are now in the cities, but we are coming from rural areas, let's also make it our responsibility that when we go to those rural areas, we have this type of conversations. When we are in the cities having this conversation, also we should advocate for what is called by Dr. Powe, is it the rural health, something like that. So let's advocate for that. But over and above that, when we go to rural areas, let's have conversation with boys and men in those areas. Let's not only engage them when you can pump them with gallons and gallons of alcohol, and you don't share anything valuable with them in terms of knowledge. Let's make it our responsibility that we contribute towards building society, and our contribution should be a positive contribution. Anyone wants to take a last bite before we close?
Yeah, let me have the parting shot, and in a form of a warning to us men. You know, I've seen a number of cases where men are said to have, you know, committed rape. And this has been bothering me because this phenomenon seems to be, you know, gaining traction, and it's happening, you know, in very short intervals now. I then had a discussion with a few guys, and I said, look, guys, when you go to taverns, when you go to have, you know, these gatherings, it's important that when you've had alcohol, let's keep away from girls. if you can, bring your own, because I've seen a number of times where a man is trapped into sleeping with a girl, and a demand thereafter is made for him to pay a sizable amount of money, and when he cannot pay that amount of money, a case of rape is opened, and that is extortion. But when you cannot prove that, at least a girl can prove that there was penetration, and her own body becomes a crime scene. So guys, I want to employ us to keep away from girls when we've had alcohol. Two, what we refer to as consent. When I did my studies, I was introduced to rape. I realized that I have rape in my life, and of course, I did not know at the time. It is on the issue of consent. What is consent? Consent must be verbal. Consent must be understood. Consent must be given, and all these type of things are things that when we are banning, when we want to hit it, that we overlook. It's important that we get that consent. If you are called a boring man because you want to solicit that yes you can, then be that kind of a man. Otherwise, let's not pressure these girls into sleeping with us, and all these type of things that we tend to forget when we are under pressure. Let's make sure that we keep away from these girls as much as we possibly can when we've had alcohol. That's my last submission. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bundu, and thank you so much to all the speakers and all the participants who took their time to come and be part of this webinar. Like I said, we are hosting various webinars, but every year, the 14th of February, we host what we call Boys and Men Conference, or Boyfriends and Husband Conference. And we don't have this bogus one. This one is the real one, that where we are getting all men under one roof to discuss. Please follow me on Facebook, Sediko Rakolote, if you want to see some of the webinars that we'll be hosting going forward. We make sure that at least once a month we host a webinar discussing a particular topic. Follow me on Facebook, Sediko Rakolote. That's where you'll see the address of all the webinars that we are hosting. Once more, thanks, Bundu, thanks, Dr. Lesego. Thanks to other colleagues, Dr. Gehakilo and others who participated in this webinar. I really appreciate your participation. The Progressive Socio-Economic Investment Institute is a public benefit trust established to advance public benefit activities. All the presentations that were made in this webinar are the views of the participants and not the Progressive Socio-Economic Investment Institute as a legal entity. Thank you so much, colleagues, and have a lovely evening. I will request that you